My name is Amina, and I have lived all my life in the village of Mubu, nestled between the red earth hills and the great savannah. It was a village where the sun painted every dawn with hope, and the baobab tree stood tall at the center, a silent guardian of our stories and secrets. The year was long ago, when the rains were generous, and the air smelled of fresh earth and wildflowers. Our village was small but full of life, children running barefoot through dusty paths, women weaving baskets under the shade of acacia trees, and men preparing for the hunting season. I was young then, a girl with curious eyes and a heart full of wonder. Our village life was woven tightly with customs, passed down from our ancestors. Every evening, as the fire cracked and the stars blinked awake, we would gather near the baobab tree to listen to the elders' tales. But that year, something different began to stir a story that would change us forever. It started with Ruth, a girl from the next village, who came to Mubu in search of her lost brother Daniel. I remember the day she arrived, her clothes torn, eyes wide with both fear and fierce determination. She spoke softly but with a strength that held us all silent. "My brother," she said, "he disappeared near the forest's edge, where the spirits are said to dwell." The forest was sacred and feared. Many of our people avoided it, whispering that the spirits guarded it fiercely, punishing those who disrespected the land. But Ruth's eyes told a different story, a story of hope and desperation. Over the days that followed, I stayed close to Ruth. I watched her navigate our customs, learning the songs we sang to honor the earth, joining the women as they prepared food, and listening to the elders' warnings. One evening, as the fire's glow flickered against our faces, Ruth confided in me. "I feel them," she said quietly. "The spirits. They're watching, but they want something from us." That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind whispered through the baobab's branches, carrying voices I could almost understand. I knew then that our story was not just about a missing boy. It was about the very soul of our village and the ties that bind us to the land. That night, I sat outside my small hut, the cool air carrying the scent of smoke and earth. The baobab tree loomed above, its thick branches like arms reaching for the sky. The elders often said the tree was a gateway between the living and the spirit world, and now I felt its presence more keenly than ever. The next morning, the village gathered at the well. Women carried clay pots on their heads, chatting softly in Kikuyu, the language of our people. Men sharpened their spears and prepared their hunting dogs. Children chased each other, their laughter echoing across the red soil. Ruth moved quietly among us, learning the daily rhythms. She asked questions about the forest, about the spirits, about the ancient songs we sang to keep peace with nature. She seemed drawn not just by hope for her brother, but by a deeper need to understand. One elder, Baba Cato, spoke to the village council. "This forest is sacred," he said, his voice heavy with respect. "Many have entered, but few return. The spirits do not take kindly to those who disrespect their home. If Ruth wishes to seek her brother, she must first honor the customs." Baba Cato's words were a warning and a guide. That evening, the women gathered to prepare the nyama, choma, roasted meat, and the sweet millet porridge for the offering. I joined them, learning the delicate balance of spices and herbs that the elders said could please the spirits. Ruth helped, her hands steady though her eyes betrayed worry. As we worked, she shared stories of her village, far beyond the hills where the sun set like fire on the horizon. She spoke of Daniel, a boy with a quick smile and a heart full of adventure. "The forest took him," she said softly, "but I believe he is alive." As the fire crackled and the offering was laid beneath the baobab, Baba Cato began the ancient chant. His voice rose and fell with the wind, calling on the spirits to guide and protect. I watched Ruth close her eyes, her lips moving in silent prayer. The night stretched on, thick with the hum of insects and the distant howl of hyenas. I felt the weight of our ancestors and the earth beneath my feet. The next day, Baba Cato handed Ruth a small talisman made of carved wood and beads. "This will protect you," he said. "But remember, respect the forest, and it will respect you." Ruth nodded, determination burning bright. Together, we prepared to enter the forest's edge, the place where light met shadow, and where many stories began and ended. As dawn broke, The village seemed to hold its breath. The golden light spilled through the trees, casting long shadows on the red earth. Ruth tightened the strap of her worn leather bag, the talisman resting against her chest like a small promise. I walked beside her, heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. The forest loomed before us, dense, wild, alive with 1,000 sounds. Birds called out their morning songs, insects buzzed in the underbrush, and somewhere, a monkey's sharp cry echoed through the canopy. Before stepping in, Baba Cato came to us one last time. "Remember," he said, eyes steady and grave. "The forest speaks in whispers. Listen. Move slowly. Offer respect." We nodded, stepping carefully past the thick trunks. The ground soft beneath our feet from last night's rain. The air grew cooler under the shade, the scent of damp leaves and wildflowers filling my lungs. The deeper we went, the more the village noise faded, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the occasional snap of twigs. Ruth moved with purpose, but I noticed her hands trembled slightly. I held her arm gently, offering silent strength. After several hours, we came upon a clearing. Sunlight streamed down through gaps in the branches, illuminating an old stone altar covered in moss and small carvings. It was clear this place was sacred, perhaps a resting spot for the forest spirits. Baba Cato spoke of. Ruth knelt beside the altar, placing a small cloth from her bag. "For Daniel," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Suddenly, a rustle in the bushes made us both freeze. Out stepped a young man, his clothes torn, face streaked with dirt and sweat. He looked wild and wary but held no weapon. "Daniel?" Ruth gasped. He nodded slowly, relief flooding his eyes. "I got lost," he said hoarsely. "The forest is alive. It tests you." We helped him to his feet, and as we turned to leave, I noticed strange symbols carved into tree trunks, signs of protection and warning. Baba Cato's lessons rang true. Respect this place, or pay the price. On the way back, Ruth told us about Daniel's trials, how he survived by listening to the forest, by honoring the spirits through song and silence. As the village came into view, the sun setting behind the hills painted the sky in streaks of red and gold. I felt a deep gratitude for the land, the people, and the stories that bind us. Ruth's eyes shone with hope. As we crossed the threshold of the small hut where Daniel had grown up, his mother rushed forward, tears streaming down her face. She clutched him as if she never wanted to let go. The air was thick with emotion, relief, sorrow, and hope all tangled together. Ruth stood beside me, her face pale but radiant with a fierce joy. "He's stronger now," she said softly, almost to herself. The forest, it gave him something. That night, the village gathered around the fire. The elders listened intently as Daniel shared his story, the trials he faced, the spirits he encountered, and the lessons he learned about respect and humility. He spoke of the ancient customs. The forest seemed to guard the rituals of offering, the songs that honor the earth, and the balance we must keep between people and nature. Many nodded in understanding, recognizing the wisdom passed down from their ancestors. Ruth's voice was steady when she spoke next. "This isn't just Daniel's story, it's ours. We must remember the old ways, the ones that bind us to this land and each other." Over the coming weeks, I saw a change in the village. The people began to embrace the forest's teachings, planting new trees near the river, holding ceremonies to honor the spirits, and living with a renewed respect for the earth beneath their feet. Ruth and Daniel became symbols of that change, their journey a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope can be found in the whispers of the trees. As I watched them one evening, sitting quietly beneath the stars, I felt proud to have witnessed their story, a story not just of survival, but of rebirth. The days that followed were filled with small but meaningful changes. The elders gathered in the center of the village, deciding to revive the ancient customs that Daniel had spoken about. These were customs almost forgotten, rituals to honor the forest spirits, to give thanks for the harvest, and to protect the land that sustained them. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Ruth was asked to lead a ceremony, a role traditionally reserved for the village's oldest women. She hesitated at first, her modesty holding her back, but the people looked to her, their eyes full of trust and hope. That night, around the crackling fire, Ruth stood tall, She wore a cloak woven from bright kente cloth, passed down from her grandmother, and held a carved wooden staff blessed by the village healer. Her voice was clear as she sang the ancient songs, her words weaving together prayers for protection, healing, and unity. The villagers joined her, their voices rising in harmony with the night wind. I could see the pride in Ruth's eyes, and the quiet strength that had grown inside her during their journey. Children danced around the fire, their faces painted with white clay in the patterns of the forest. Animals, symbols of courage, wisdom, and resilience. The young men and women gathered herbs and flowers, leaving them as offerings at the base of the oldest baobab tree. The village's sacred guardian, Ruth, became a living bridge between the old ways and the new, a keeper of stories, a healer of spirits, and a voice for the future. She worked alongside Daniel, who shared his knowledge of the forest's secrets, teaching the youth how to live with respect and balance. Through their efforts, the village grew closer, bound by a shared purpose and renewed faith in the land and each other. One evening, as I sat beside Ruth, I asked her how she felt about the path she had taken. She smiled softly, looking out toward the stars. "I am no longer just a witness," she said. "I am part of the story now. This land, these people, they are my family, and I will protect them with everything I have." A few weeks later, the village prepared for the festival of the new harvest, a celebration to honor the land's gifts and to thank the spirits for their protection. The entire village buzzed with energy. Women adorned their hair with fresh flowers. Men sharpened their spears and polished their drums. Ruth was at the heart of the preparations. She had helped teach the children the songs and dances, blending the ancient traditions. Daniel had reminded them of with the joy of their own renewed spirit. The day of the festival arrived with clear blue skies and a gentle breeze. The village elders lit the great fire near the baobab tree, and the scent of roasting yams and spiced millet filled the air. As the sun set, the drums began to beat. The rhythm was deep and steady, the heartbeat of the village. Ruth stepped forward again, this time not just as a leader, but as a symbol of hope. She moved gracefully with the dancers, her feet pounding the earth, her voice rising with the chorus. But amid the celebration, a shadow crept in. A group of young men from a neighboring village arrived unexpectedly. They had heard of the village's renewed strength and sought to challenge it, a test of power and respect. The elders and warriors gathered quickly, tension thick in the air. Ruth stood beside Daniel, her heart pounding but her face calm. She knew that this moment was more than just a challenge. It was a test of whether their community could hold together, whether the values they had rebuilt would endure. In the end, words and wisdom won over weapons. Ruth spoke firmly, reminding both villages of their shared roots and the importance of peace. Her courage and clarity diffused the conflict, earning the respect of both sides. That night, as the festival resumed, I saw Ruth's eyes glisten with tears, not of fear, but of pride. She had grown into a leader, a guardian of her people and their future. Would you like me to expand on the personal relationship between Ruth and Daniel during these times? Or describe a quiet, reflective moment where Ruth shares her fears and hopes? That night, after the village had settled back into its peaceful rhythm, I found Daniel sitting by the riverbank, the moon casting silver ripples across the water. The drums and laughter had faded into a distant hum, leaving only the gentle sound of the flowing river. I walked slowly to his side, my heart still heavy from the day's events. The challenge from the neighboring village had shaken us all, but it had also reminded me how fragile peace could be. Daniel looked up and smiled softly when he saw me. "You should be resting, Ruth." I shook my head, sitting down beside him on the cool grass. "Rest is hard to find these days, with so much to think about." He nodded, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. "I know, but even leaders need to remember who they are and why they fight." I sighed, staring at the shimmering water. "Sometimes I fear I'm not strong enough. What if I fail the village, the people who have come to rely on me? What if my courage falters when it matters most?" Daniel reached out, taking my hand gently. "Ruth, strength is not the absence of fear. It is the will to keep moving forward despite it. You've carried us through the darkest days. You are the heart of this village." His words warmed me, yet the weight of responsibility still pressed down. "What about you?" I asked quietly. Do you ever doubt? He chuckled softly. Every day. But knowing you stand beside me makes those doubts easier to bear. We sat in silence for a moment, the river's gentle murmur filling the space between us. Then, with a quiet determination, I said, "We have a future to build, Daniel. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone who calls this village home." He squeezed my hand. "Together, Ruth, always." And in that shared moment, beneath the African stars, I felt a quiet hope blossom, a hope that no matter what storms came, we would face them as one. As the moons passed, the village of Itoro blossomed. We repaired the broken fences, replanted the fields, and rekindled the fire in our hearts. The festival that once brought fear was transformed into a celebration of unity. No longer a contest of pride. It became a gathering of stories, dances, and shared laughter between neighboring villages. Even the stubborn elders from Awaken crossed into our square, breaking kola nuts with us under the baobab tree. Daniel and I, side by side, stood not as saviors, but as servants of our people. He taught the children to carve drums, and I taught the girls to speak boldly. Our love didn't shout, it whispered through our shared glances, our daily labor, and the strength we gave one another. One morning, as the sun painted gold across the savannah, I walked through the fields barefoot, my belly round with life. The same soil that once tasted our tears now held the promise of new beginnings. I bent down, pressed my hand against the earth, and whispered a prayer. For every struggle we faced, for every soul we lost, let this land remember our journey. The winds carried my words across the hills, as if the ancestors themselves were listening. Now, as I sit beneath this tree, gray strands woven through my braids, I watch the children run barefoot through the dust. My children, their children, and I smile, because I was there. I witnessed it all, and I remember.